Max Musau is a CEO and founder of G-Way Studios. He has extensive experience with developing digital solutions and dynamic platforms that foster engaging, interactive, and collaborative learning environments, enhancing student learning outcomes and institutional success. He is the co-producer with Rett and Donosa, Mali, of the mobile game Yusawa, G-Way's fourth developed game. Musau, with his game studio, has demonstrated the interest and track record in creating historical and educational games through collaboration with Trent University, Canada, on the game project Bunce Island. Through the Mirror, an African history adventure uncovering the history of slavery in Sierra Leone. He's a former MIT research fellow and has also worked with the Achtung Audubon Studio, Citizen Science Africa, among others, showcasing a multifaceted approach to game development. Without any further ado, Max Musau.
Perfect. All right. Hello and good morning. How's everyone doing today? Good. Thank you. I'm super happy to be here, all the way from Nairobi, Kenya. It's a 25-hour flight. So I'm really happy to get this opportunity. I want to thank the University of Utah, IRC, and Switchboard, and particularly Christy and Milad. Their support and belief in our work has just been unbelievable. So thank you. So yes, my name is Max Musau. I'm the founder of G-Way Studios. And we started G-Way Studios back in 2019 with the goal of creating African story-driven games, and particularly educational and historical games. You can find us on www.gway.team. That has kind of like our suite of platforms that we have. On our platforms, we have about 750 users. So that's developers and artists. We have about 130 games up at the moment, and we have an esports community that's about 2,500 people in East Africa particularly. And so that's us there with the team at our studio garden. So, Gaming Against Slavery. We started this project back in 2022, and its main goal was to shed light and awareness on descendant-based slavery through the co-production of a mobile video game. What do I mean by co-production? This means working with community representatives. So we went into the community and worked with the community representatives to gather narratives, which you'll see in a minute. And we also worked with game developers and artists from across Africa to help build the prototype for the game, right? And just a tag, descendant-based slavery is something that you're born into. So it's usually the elephant in the room, no one talks about it, and it's still prevalent in Western Africa at the moment. Right? One of our major partners was Dr. Marie Rett from SOAS University in London. The game is actually founded on her research. She's an associate professor at University of London SOAS, and she's the director of research action projects, particularly Gaming Against Slavery, from 2021 to 2023, and recently Umoja Against Slavery, which we just started, and I'll tell you about in a moment. And she has more than 15 years experience of expertise on the history of slavery in Africa. So the game is actually founded on research based on Marie's experience. She's also the director of of the documentary Slavery and Emancipation in Kais, which is in Mali, and also the web documentary A Free Village as well. And she's a scriptwriter of the animation All Equal as well. Our other partner is Donosa, which is a local Malian-based NGO. Donosa means Path of Knowledge. It's a non-profit association promoting local knowledge from marginalized communities in Africa. The association was born back in 2017 with the aim of continuing the innovative work by Bakari Konate and his project, When the Village Wakes Up, and the goal to promote village knowledge in Mali and to extend that to other villages as well. Behind the scenes. So I'll show you a little bit about behind the scenes of the game, first introducing Donosa, and then a little bit about how we collaborated with the representatives. So when we arrived, initially we thought everyone was just happy to see us. It turned out that there was a wedding at the airport. So we went with the flow. They were still happy to see us. So this is Donosa, the NGO based in Mali, just introducing themselves.
What organization are you from?
Nous travaillons pour l'association Donosa.
Okay.
Yeah, working for Donosa.
Donosa. Okay, what does the organization do?
C'est une association qui fait la collecte et la diffusion des savoirs locaux en Afrique de l'Ouest.
The organization is collecting knowledge, local knowledge.
So he's just describing what the NGO does, which is
Okay.
collecting knowledge. This is the game jam that we held. First, initially, we started with running games to get the mood right around the game. And then we ended up in the game jam and we started So it was a great time. So a little bit about our framework, our research and co-creation framework. First, we selected participants from all the 8 regions in Mali in particular. We brought them into one place. We showed them how to do data collection. So in our case, this was how to go back into the communities and collect stories. When they did that, we brought them back to the game jam, we gathered them again back into the game jam, which is what you saw. And through those experiences that they collected, the stories that they collected, we had this game jam where they contributed to the design of the game. Right? So just through the research that they had done and their experience, they all contributed to the design of the game. And so from that, we created this, what we call a game design document, which we then, on a second level, shared with developers and artists from across Africa to be able to create prototypes around around the concepts that were built, right? So that's the developer and artist engagement. Then we moved into the development of the game, actually, and then we moved into the sharing and feedback, which is the stage we're in. So we've been going around to schools, sharing the game, and just collecting feedback from everyone. Right, and from this, from our framework, this is our footprint now. We've been able to connect with people in about 12 African countries, just sharing the game and having conversations around the topic. Some of the concepts that we collected from the game jam were, number one was Afosin Touare, which was around a young person who was not allowed to run for the mayoral seat just because of his history, his family history and descendants. The second one was kidnapped, where it's a very common story where kids are sent out during harvest to go harvesting and they get kidnapped while they're in the field. The third one was head of the family, which is one where the head of the village would take advantage of families just because of their low status within the village. So he would come in and take advantage of the people. And the last one was a particularly interesting one because it's a love story, which is very common, where two people are not allowed to be together just because of their history and their caste. Right, so those are the four major ones that we collected. And we'll jump in for a minute into the trailer of the game. That's cool.
No, you are the slave team. You can't win against us nobles.
Slavery has existed here for a very long time, long before the Baptists arrived on Orkney. Most of the time, the slaves were war captives who were sold here or for the transplanetary trade.
And so the game is available now. You can scan it, you can get it on the Play Store, and for Android, you can get it from our store, which is Jiwe.io. You can take a photo and scan it and play it. Please play it and leave us a comment. Be very interested. So next steps. We would like to expand the mobile game into a universe of stories with a feedback loop that's designed to capture and geotag discussions among players. I mean, it's very important. I think Ken also mentioned it before, just being able to have the game produce data so that researchers can come along later and kind of research the discussions that have been had because of the game. Number two is to create learning materials on how to use the game as a tool within classrooms to draw out difficult discussions. Ultimately, our goal with the game was to create a game that would create opportunities to hold difficult discussions while having players connect, build empathy, and hopefully bring out change in global awareness about slavery and its modern legacies to help fight discrimination and marginalization today. I mean, one of the stories that really stood out for me when we shared it within a refugee school in Nairobi was from Marriott. And Marriott, immediately you give kids the game, they group up together to play it. And when they group up, as they play it, they begin to share stories with each other. So for example, Mariam identified and said, hey, this happens to my aunt, and everyone within the circle started contributing and talking to her about it and empathizing, and each one of them started sharing their own experiences around it, right? So our goal is to be able to start these difficult conversations and capture them as well. Yes, very few mobile game experiences like this are available online, let alone being free to play. So if you're in a position to support our work or you're interested in working with us, please let me know. Yeah. Support from UNESCO. So back in 2022, 2023, when we first started the game, based on Donkosira's work and Marie Rodette, based on their work on descendant-based slavery in Mali, UNESCO has now come in this year, 2024, with support, of which we're working on a new game that will highlight the history of resistance to slavery on the Swahili coast. A project that we're calling Umoja Dhidi ya Mtumwa. For those that don't speak Swahili, it means United Against Slavery on the Swahili coast. And the grayscale photo is basically what we're looking at as East Africa. And in the green photo, the red areas are what we're calling the Swahili coast. Right? And it was a major stop within the slavery routes before, as people would head to either the Middle East, India, or the Western Africa. The game will be designed through community-driven co-creation alongside young locals and researchers from coastal areas and from Puan University, who's our local partner in Kilifi. Our first meeting was held in August 21st to 23rd at Puan University, which kicked off our research phase. The interactive game will be ultimately used in schools, that's our goal, and museums across Kenya and possibly in East Africa, and hopefully in the world as a model of community-driven co-creation in the digital preservation of historical pasts and legacies. Those are the community representatives from all along the coast, and that's the organizing team. They're from NatCom, UNESCO, myself, and University of London as well. Thank you very much. Please play the game and join the fight against slavery. Thank you. I think we might take some questions.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand. I'll bring you the mic.
Okay, beyond me. What's the reaction been from the kids that are playing the game? Kids, adults. Okay, I was asking what's the reaction from the kids that have been playing the game or the adults that have been playing the game?
Well, very excited. One, immediately we give them the game, they tend to group up. So they tend to sit around the circle and begin to play it. And they begin to share conversations around it, and they're super interested in the fact that, one, it was a locally built game, and two, these are narratives that they don't usually see in games. We did the similar thing, very interesting. We did a play test at the MIT Game Lab as well. And the same thing happened. People tended to group up, and from the narrative of the story, they begin to have discussions among themselves. So it's very interesting how similar the reaction has been.
Sorry, Samira. Can you tell us a little bit more about how the participants for the co-creation process are selected? So the community members that you showed in the picture, how are they chosen to be part of this process?
Okay, good question. So we initially connect with the head person of the community. Usually there's a lot of hierarchies, and if you start picking people, there's a lot of chance that there'll be questions and rejection. So first what we do is we connect with the head person of the village or the community, and we ask them to select someone within the community that they feel would be able to talk to everyone in the community and collaborate with us towards our goal. So that's kind of how we do it. We go through the head person of the village, who will introduce us to the people he feels like would work with us best.
Okay, I'm fielding a question from one of my team members. What is the current penetration rate of mobile and internet literacy in Kenya, particularly in both urban and rural areas? Additionally, what strategies or initiatives are most effective for promoting and encouraging the use of game among people, especially kids in rural areas who may have had limited exposure to digital technologies? Sorry about that. How can challenges such as lack of digital skills, cultural resistance, or limited access to technology be addressed to ensure broader adoption?
Good question. Yeah, just off the top of my head, in Kenya particularly, we have about 80% penetration rate of internet connectivity. So in Kenya, it's fairly good. But what we've been struggling with is devices. So having mobile devices within classrooms has been a place where particularly our government has been struggling with. There are a few NGOs that have been doing after-school classes, so stuff that's not within the school curriculum, but things that they can do outside of school and after school. And that's been a growing trend. I think in East Africa, Kenya is actually probably one of the best connected in terms of literacy rates, digital literacy rates within the region. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's answered your question completely. Yeah.
A lot of service providers in here are working with youth, and I was a previous youth program manager, and it was always hard to have incredible events like game jams or anything that had to do with technology, because you had to bring folks to a certain level of digital skills to be able to participate in a meaningful way. Is there pre-work that has to go into like the preparation for a game jam to actually have it be beneficial and folks feel like they can contribute in the technical skills?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we thought about, and we don't think so. So games are pretty universal. So from the game jam, we started with very simple games for people to kind of get into the mood of games. And then after that, kind of our game development framework just kind of took over and people started contributing. So in terms of the two ideas of one, because the first step for them was to go out and collect stories. So we did digital training around, you know, how do they use mobile phones, how do they record, how do they sync stuff. So that was there, and I think that was the basic level that we needed. After that, games became a common theme between everyone. So that part of it became very easy.
Hi, two practical questions. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about the timeline from selecting the participants to the feedback. And the other one is around, you mentioned collecting data through the game. Do you have discussion boards and that's how you're collecting that, or is there some other way that you're doing that?
Okay, I'll answer your last question first. We are trying to create a wiki, so that's not yet there yet. So that we can be able to archive the discussions that are had. And in terms of the timeline, it usually takes us about a year. So 2-3 months with the research on the ground, another 2-3 months creating the game design document through the game jam, and another 6 months developing the game. So roughly about 10 to 12 months there. And I think your last question is, your first question was super important. It's how do we gather these discussions and how do we draw insights from these discussions? I think that's the next step that we're looking at, to be able to understand, okay, we've been able to draw out these difficult discussions, but how do we gather insights from them?
So I was wondering, what is the age limit for the game and like how it was decided? I know it depends on the content of the game, but like if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, so the game's for 12 and above. So we selected 12 years and above as an age where they can have discussions among each other, and we don't have a limit to that, above that. So, yeah.
Given that this is so mission-driven, curious to know like how you're thinking about measuring change, like how the attitude changes, or what specific outcomes you're hoping to see, and how you're thinking about measuring that.
Yeah. So again, just trying to figure out the discussions and how the discussions have moved. It's what we're trying to figure out how to track. So before they played the game, this was kind of what they were thinking, and after. This is what they're thinking and how they're discussing about it. This is what we're trying to figure out. How do we record this to be able to measure that change eventually? Yeah.
My question is just around the illustration process. So did you have a vision for this from the get-go? Was that like a community-driven process? Just around like the colors and the look and feel of the game is so important for engagement, and so I would just like to know a little bit about that creative process.
Good question. So the art's done by our partners in Senegal, and we found them through the game jam as well. So we didn't have a vision for it. When the art and stuff was submitted, we kind of sift through it and decided, okay, this looks perfect. And in that way, it was also kind of sourced from the community to go into the game. So we didn't have a vision, but we managed through the game jam to connect with artists that we liked.
Hi, I'm just wondering if there are any kind of safety protocols or things put in, because these are, first of all, on the individual level, so these can bring up psychological and mental health. People can get upset and depressed, and on one hand, so the individual response and the people having the discussions, and then the power dynamics, so challenging power. You're saying that the community leader is identifying the people to be involved, but the community leader might be perpetuating some of this stereotypes, if not activities. So I'm just wondering how you deal with the fallout of all this discussion that you fomented, which of course is a good thing, but then what's the response?
Good question. So in terms of privacy and security, I would have shared kind of like a video of how the kids are interacting with it, but that would affect that. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that any feedback that's given is anonymized. We just collect what discussion was had and the location where it was had. So that's kind of what we're trying to do, to make sure that the feedback is very private and anonymous. In terms of working with the head person on the ground, a lot of it is based on Marie's research. And so we can kind of figure out, okay, which direction in this area makes sense, what are the pitfalls, because there are some situations where, for example, in the Swahili coast, there was a lot of Omani influence in terms of slavery in the region. And then later on, they came in and spent a lot of money to try and change that perception and whitewash the actual history. So we are, because of the grounding and the research of Marie, we're trying to make sure that we steer away from those pitfalls.
Thank you so much for such an interesting presentation. I'm wondering more about the co-creation process. What did people come preparing to talk about how to approach the topic of slavery, or did they decide to approach that topic? Did they have other topics they wanted to focus on, and kind of how did that play out?
Well, initially we engaged with Donosa, the local Malian NGO group, and one of the topics they had already been engaging with the communities is the topic of the caste system and how it presents itself in the modern day. So when we came in, that conversation was already started. And so the process of them going back and gathering the stories and coming back to share them with us was already kind of in the works when we joined.
Can you walk us through a little bit of the budget that it would take to do that over that year? And then are there any implications over time in the app stores for keeping it up to date, and what you expect for keeping it going indefinitely?
So we spent about, all in all, in the project, about $50,000 throughout the year. And we're now seeing that there is some maintenance on the back end that we're having to figure out. So we're super happy that UNESCO has come on board and they'll be able to support the project. But yeah, keeping it online and now creating this wiki where people can come in, save the discussions, and researchers can also come in and peer in to what's been discussed and looking at the outputs of the game. We're now realizing that this online component now requires maintenance, which wasn't factored in initially. So that's what we're trying to figure out. But all in all, for a project like this, around a year, at around $50,000.
And I just had a really, simple question about how many users are you getting for the game, and are people finding you organically? Do you have a marketing budget to to spread awareness? Or are you mainly doing it through in-person,
Good question.
organic reach?
We don't have a marketing budget. Otherwise, I think the budget would shoot up quite a bit. People are finding us organically. We're going into schools and sharing it with teachers and sharing the ideas with teachers who are able to kind of push the ideas forward. I think our partnership now with UNESCO, which is now leading us to be joined with the Kenya curriculum, I think that's a great step. They've shown interest in using this as a tool within the classroom. They have a module 4, I think in class 7, where they talk about the history of slavery in Africa. And so they're thinking about how do we use that tool within the classroom. So we're using these kind of organic methods to kind of get the game out there.
One last question. Dun, dun, dun.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing your game with us. I'm not sure what exposure looks like in the communities you're working with as far as video games go, but with the representation in the game, as well as working firsthand with you and your studio to create the game, do you find there's a lot more interest in youth trying to pursue this career path? And do you see like a foreseeable future for the gaming industry in your communities that you're working with?
Yes, so people are usually mind blown that we made the game. And Kenya being positioned where it is, Kenya is also called like the tech savannah of Africa. And so gaming is a new market that's opening up, both as game development and esports as well. There's a lot of challenges in terms of connectivity, skill, but all those are kind of slowly being overcome. And actually, just in the last 2 years, I think, I've just seen a few people being able to take esports as a full-time career, just playing games and earning from that. So I think it's a space that's growing. I think in terms of African story-driven games, there's a gap in the world. And the more people that we're able to support, through our game jams to kind of get the stories out there, I think definitely is a different voice in the world and fills a particular gap. Thank you. Thank you.
We met Max at the Games for Change conference 2 summers ago and couldn't stop talking about the commonalities in co-creation. So thank you so much, Max. It's an honor to have you here today. And incredible questions from the group. I think there's a lot of opportunity with gaming because it's fun. And when you're having fun, you learn at a faster rate. Like the data is there. And so how do we make, even with adults, not just youth, gamify some of the work we do? And especially if it's an amazing way to generate data, which is what we love here in resettlement. Just one shout out before we give you all a break. Senka, raise your hand over there in the corner. Senka's actually running a Streaming for Humanity event virtually today.